to the Builders Coach Show. My name's Kurt Heggetschweiler and I'm here with Jess, my co-host.
Welcome, everyone. Kurt, let's get into it. Last week you were in WA, a breakfast meeting and 2 events. Tell us about it.
Beautiful Western Australia. I spent a day down in Busselton, southwest part of WA, and I ended up going for a morning run. I almost didn't, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I went for 20 minutes and it was absolutely beautiful. Soft sand, a bit like Cape Town, really fun, shells everywhere. And I was just waiting for the dolphins to come out.
But they didn't.
No, they didn't. But it was a great way to start the day. And the sun was coming up. It was absolutely beautiful. So, 3 massive days, fantastic people. The people over in Perth and West Australia are so friendly. They just want to show you around and they're very proud of the beautiful state that they're in.
Yeah, and so they should be.
Absolutely.
So last time we spoke about recruitment, and if you haven't seen the last episode of the Builders Coach Show, please go and check it out. YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast.
12.0, especially if you're looking to employ people, it's a great recruitment process and it works, and the whole thing takes like 4 hours.
Keeping with the people and team theme, what we want to do in this episode is talk about KPIs, how to measure team performance.
Absolutely. Also culture.
Yes.
The glue that binds a team. It's so important to have a culture. You either define the culture or your team does it for you. So there's a process. We'll talk about the process for how to create a culture to build a winning team.
But before we get into that, I saw this research just earlier this week and I sent it to you. They're called the bad apple effect.
Yes, interesting. They did a study. There were groups of 6 people, and what they did is they put in a random negative person, just one of those people that's really negative, and the results were, I think, 40% worse results with the activities they were involved in, and a 25% drop in productivity as well. So if you've got a bad apple on your team, I can't tell you how important it is to, 1, recognize it, acknowledge it, and then secondly, do something about it. If you've got someone there that shouldn't be there, your team is only as strong as its weakest link. And if you know about it, your team certainly knows about it, and that person knows about it as well. And in all fairness to them, the best thing you can do is move them on, because if they're not a good fit for your business, then there must be something else out there that's better suited to them.
A big an important prerequisite for team culture and good teams is leadership.
Absolutely. So important. I mean, the fish rots from the head down, and really the leader of the business, which is you, by the way, is the one that sets the tone for the business, also the direction of the business. So you want to have a vision. The hallmark of leadership is decision making. So you've got to decide where you're going. You're the captain of the ship, where we're headed. Set the course in a certain direction. Clarity is power. The more certain you are about what you want, the specialty that you want to dominate, the better it is. Now, people want to follow a leader who they have confidence in. They want to, be behind someone who knows what they want and are prepared to say it. And when they say something, they follow through and do it. That is so important. Integrity and congruency with what you say and what you do. It's also about earning the right to not only build a successful team, ideally a dream team, but also to build leaders underneath you that can take charge and then allow you to step back as the leader or the owner of the business.
Talking of leadership, I think self-image is really important.
Absolutely. It's so incredibly important. And this actually came up in Perth, where I got the guys in the room to do exercises on their table. So the different tables, the guys were doing an exercise. And I heard this guy talking about how he was fed up with how builders weren't valuing themselves as professionals. He was like, we need to value ourselves. We are professional people as well, like other professions out there. We need to package up our service and value it enough to charge. And he was talking about preliminary agreements and getting involved with a cost analysis or doing a quote, just charging for that. And I absolutely loved it. But he was so right, because what we do is obviously share best practice process and give you lots of different tools that you can use to get results quickly in your business. But it doesn't matter what systems or processes you get from myself or anyone else. If your self-image is one of just being someone who just wants to plod along or just get by or just pay your bills, none of those systems are going to help. It's like a sports person who believes they're useless at playing tennis or basketball or whatever it is. If your self-image is bad, maybe, and we all have a self-image for a different area of our life. There's sport, there's telling jokes, there's being in social situations. it's really important if you want to be successful and if you want to optimize your results, that you optimize your self-image. There's a great book by Maxwell Marks called Psycho-Cybernetics. And he was a plastic surgeon that did a lot of work on people's faces, a lot of their movie stars. And even after he fixed them, he found that they still felt bad about themselves, even though they looked amazing. So he realized there was a problem on the inside. And in the same way that your business will never outperform your leadership, you will never outperform your self-image. So it's so important to work on that. And here's the thing, like, do you see yourself as a professional? Do you see yourself as someone striving for excellence, or do you see yourself as someone average? And imagine your kids, right? Like if you've got kids, or if you don't have kids, you've got a nephew or niece, and they came to you and they said, hey, could you give me some advice on my career? What would you say to them? Now, would you tell them to pursue their career, with everything they've got, to become number one, to dominate, to do their absolute best of it and put in all that they have? Or would you say to them, just be average? Just plod along and be average. Because the reality is, and you know this as well as me, right? Your kids will not listen to one word that you say. They will not listen to a word you say, but they will watch what you do. So the question is, what example are you setting? So powerful.
Yes, and take your own advice, right?
Absolutely. So giving advice is cheap, paying lip service to things. Doesn't really. It's like if you're the parent that smokes cigarettes and tells them not to, or drinks lots of alcohol and tells them not to, they're going to follow your lead. Sometimes people go the other way and they do the opposite. Well, and it works the same for your team as well.
So one question that comes up quite often is when to employ someone.
Absolutely. I often get asked that. How do you know when to bring someone on? Maybe a new supervisor on site or someone in the office. And it is important to know when to do that. So we use forecasting for that. So financial forecasting, a 12-week cash flow forecast. The rule of thumb is that you are able to bring someone on and cover the costs of them coming on board for 12 weeks. So if it costs $3,000 a week, you want to be able to cash flow that with jobs on hand based on payment schedules that you've got coming up, and very importantly, have twice as much in the pipeline in signed prelim agreements or cost analysis or charge for quotes than what you have on hand. That's when you hit the go button and employ. Now, there's also team structure forecasting, like an organizational chart where you have you as the owner at the top, and then you have the different heads of the different departments, and that could be the same person. In corporate world, as you'd know, it's very siloed, but in small business, people could have a hybrid position. So you could have someone in the office doing a bit of marketing, a bit of contracts admin. But it's important to have an organizational chart, just an aerial view of all the different roles, including yourself as a business owner, and look at what it looks like now, and then also 12 months from now based on the work that's coming through. So most of you, especially in bigger jobs, you'll know what the volume of work's looking like for the next 12 months. And if there's a 50% growth, maybe you're going to need another supervisor, another carpenter, maybe you're going to bring someone on in the office to help with the estimating. But it's important to look ahead and then align that team structure forecasting with your financial forecasting, and then hit the go button. Also, very importantly, cost in any of these people. If the office based of it's an overhead. If they are on site, then it's a cost of sale, and that needs to be factored in at an hourly rate weekly allocation.
Tell us, how important are job descriptions?
Crucial. So many employees complain that they get complaints from the business owner about not doing their job properly, that they often weren't told specifically what their job role was. So having a list of roles and tasks, a basic job description, and then within that having key performance indicators or KPIs, we've all heard of those. And that's just the 80-20 rule at play. It's looking at, 27 things that you have to do in your role as the supervisor, but then what are the critical path activities? What are those 5 or 6 activities that, if done well, will ensure profitability, good cash flow, but if not done, will also cost the business money? In fairness to your team members, they need to know what those critical path activities are. Yeah. And those activities need to be reviewed for systems and training and development. Because if you're going to systemize your business, you want to start with that 20% that is responsible for 80% of your results, and results being profit, cash flow, workflow.
And then quick tip, AI, ChatGPT is really useful. Like if you want to try to create a job description from scratch. Just ask ChatGPT.
Job description or SOPs.
Yeah.
Standard operating procedures. I heard these apps out there now that can do it for you, and they do it quickly and well.
Yeah. So you mentioned the KPIs, the key performance indicator. How best to track that or to reward performance for an employee?
You want to do performance reviews ideally every quarter, one-on-one with your employees. And then as a team as well, you want to get them together. I want to talk about how to build a culture and how to validate your team intellectually and emotionally, and how powerful that is in terms of motivating your team and just giving them a lot of motivation and drive. But individual performance reviews, and if you're thinking, well, how much time is this going to take? It's a mission. Very simple. 15 minutes, one-on-one, face-to-face, grab a coffee, sit down, look at those key performance indicators. So this obviously requires that you have them. But you look at the 5 tasks. You look at, which of those tasks are you performing well in? So these 3, maybe you're doing really well. If you're a site supervisor, maybe they're laying the job out for the day, they're updating the site diary, they're doing the programming really well. But maybe they're not doing the call forwards to the subcontractors to make sure that they're going to be there. And, maybe there's a leadership area that they need to improve on. So then you say to them, look, how can we help you? Is there a system solution that we can put in place? And you always want to be looking for a system solution with everything that you do. But if there is already a system there, maybe what they need is some training on that system. That's why it's either systems development or training solution that you implement. But basically you have a 1-page performance review document. It's got those 5 tasks on. You mention which areas they're going to improve on. You sign it, they get a copy, you get a copy, and then 3 months later you revisit it. And they're either improving in those areas or you're going to performance manage them.
Also, one thing that I think is really important, don't just do a performance review when things are not going great. Because often we're thinking, this person might not be performing great, or I need to give them a comment, and then you do a performance review. But really, it's just as important to do your performance review when you have people that are performing. You need to give back positive feedback.
Absolutely. Recognition is so important.
Yeah.
Just again, validation, which I want to get into in a sec when we talk about building a strong culture. So if you've never thought about building a culture for your business, you need to know that your business already has one. The strongest personalities will create the culture. That's going to be, just the way things are done, the general attitude of the people. And most of you guys will have people in the office and then people inside. So ideally, you want to engineer a culture or a code of conduct that everyone understands and adheres to. Now, the easier it is to understand and the tighter it is, the better. All right. So an example is Special Forces. They have a very tight code of conduct because in a battle situation, emotions go up, IQ goes down. So they only have to remember maybe 4 things, and that's for the protection of the individual and also of the group. Yeah. And it's extremely tight. It's like a brotherhood. Apparently the strongest bond that any human being can have is in those Special Forces because they are protecting each other's lives with their lives. They'll die for each other basically. So the way that you set a culture like that is you get your team together, and I recommend you get your team together regularly, at least every 3 months in a relaxed environment. Make sure things are in a good space, like there's a good vibe, a good energy. And there's different ways to do this. Some people do it on a Friday afternoon with a couple of beers, maybe lunch. And then as the owner of the business, you kick it off. It's just 5 minutes of updating everyone on where the business is going. So remember, you want to have a vision, a clear vision, and you want to let them know, all the good things that you're doing. Hopefully you're working on your business and maybe you've got some new marketing, a new brochure, maybe the website's been updated, whatever it is, show everyone what's going on. Let them know that you're taking on, better quality work. There's exciting things on the horizon. The future's looking bright. And then you turn to them and ask them, what do you think? What do you think we should keep doing in order to dominate our space in our area? And then you capture those on a whiteboard, on a piece of butcher paper. And then once you've exhausted that, and by the way, you want to get everyone to participate. So make sure that everyone talks. Usually the extroverted people speak first, but if anyone's sitting in the corner being quiet, encourage them to speak. And if you find that it's like pulling teeth. You can even do an Indian rain stick where you pass something around. I think we've spoken about that on one of our previous pods. But you start off with, what should we keep doing? The second question is very powerful and the most important of the three, and it's what should we stop doing? Is there anything we're doing that we shouldn't be doing? Maybe people aren't turning up on time, so they're not punctual, or that they're not working together as a team, they don't have each other's backs. And you want to draw this out of them. This is so important because if it comes from you, and you already know what's not working in the team, but if it comes from you, it's a bit like your mother telling you to do your homework or your teacher telling you to do something. It just kills the desire in you. But if you can draw it out of them, then they will take ownership of it, and people don't sink the boat they're rowing in. All right, so it's very powerful. The third one is, what do we need to start doing? Is there anything we're not doing that we need to start doing? And again, you capture all of these, and then you'll end up with 10 or 12 things, and they will form the basis for your culture. But because it's come from them, and look, maybe one or two can come from you, you can add them to the list, but the team has developed it, and that forms the personality, if you like, of the team. And yes, this can change, but as new people come on, then they will be introduced to that culture. And in fact, that culture will serve as a guide or a recruiting process, for the type of person that you want to bring on.
Yeah, a very powerful exercise, the keep, stop, and start.
Absolutely. And by the way, you can do that exercise more frequently if you're going through a growth period. If lots of change is happening, a bit like using stand-up meetings. We've spoken about stand-up meetings, 15-minute meetings every day where you look at what happened yesterday, what's happening today, and what the blockers are, things preventing you from moving forward. I spoke to one of my guys about that today, actually, prescribed that for them because they've got a lot of change happening. But with your teams, you need to get them together. You need to talk about, what's working, what's not, and what changes need to be introduced, especially in these times where, the world is changing so rapidly.
Do you have some example for our listeners of like really good team culture principles that you've seen out there from your clients?
Yes, absolutely. Striving for excellence, for example, strong communication, always looking for a system solution. So if ever they have an issue that comes up, they ask themselves, what is the system solution? Is there a system solution? Some of the other things would be honest and open communication, always. Having the uncomfortable conversations, not keeping things buried inside, especially if there's maybe a niggle between two people, having a process. This is where layering. A system solution for having an uncomfortable conversation, which could be using an Indian rain stick. So one person talks, and often they'll say, look, I don't like the way you speak to me sometimes. It makes me quite upset. And because I'm holding the Indian rain stick, you might feel the blood rise to your head because you think, well, you speak to me a lot worse. But then I may, because you're not allowed to talk, I may follow that up with, but you've been one of the best people I've ever worked with. You're amazing. You're really professional. Whereas, people start talking over each other, it totally kills it. So there's some examples. It goes on and on. I mean, we've got 16 points of culture in our business, and you want it to be a combination of attributes and values that align with your own values and that attracts the type of person or the caliber person that is best suited into that environment. Because, if you're going to build a dream team, if you've got high standards and you're a peak performer, then you will attract other peak performers. But in the same token, you'll be repulsive to a bludger, which is an Australian term for someone who's extremely lazy and doesn't want to do any work. And those people do exist. Some people just don't have strong work ethic. Strong work ethic is another one. There's people out there that because of their upbringing and their genetics and their schooling, they can't go to bed at night without having put in a really hard day's work. Like they just feel good about themselves when they've, that's probably you listening as well. You don't feel great when you've wasted a day and you've done nothing.
So, Kurt, one last question. Do you believe in risk-taking?
Absolutely. I think it's essential within the framework of a strong culture. So if you've got strong communication, you've got respect for others, you've got strong work ethic, client centricity is another value that you could have where you love your clients. You want to be selective over the clients you let through the front door. I don't want any toxic clients coming through, but once they're in, you want to love them to death, really look after them. And if you've got a framework like that, always looking for a system solution, then within that framework, you can allow people to take risks. And this is why it's so important to have a culture in the first place. And then you can free people up. A bit like kids, if you put up a fence for them to play in, and then they can run around, but they're not going to dart off onto the road or do anything dangerous. And from a business perspective, that's going to damage your brand. They can try things, and very important to recognize that part of risk taking is developing a culture of learning, because the way to learn is to get things wrong. Get little things wrong, and then you learn from that and you carry that lesson forward. So you either win or you learn. Mm-hmm. And people aren't going to be able to learn if they don't get things wrong from time to time. So you've got to make it okay to do that, but again, within the confines of a strong culture.
The one thing I would say is that one person can really shift the whole culture. So you have to be,
it comes back to the negative person, right? Like one really negative person.
Our initial comment, yes.
I've seen it when we run live events, right? You could have one person in the room with a really strong personality, mm-hmm. but a very negative attitude, like sitting there like this with their arms folded and almost with their back to you. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it causes other people, maybe people with smaller personalities that are not as outspoken, a little bit shy and reserved, it causes them to go right in the shell like a sea anemone, and they just not speak up at all. And you often sense it, right? We can sense the vibe in the room. The exact opposite is true as well. And that was the case in Perth. People were talking and interacting. Mm-hmm. In fact, the first day there was a breakfast meeting and we went in and no one was saying a word. About 20 people. Mm-hmm. No one was making eye contact. Mm-hmm. And there was an events manager and she walked outside, as did I, just getting ready to do my keynote presentation. And she said, I can't stand the uncomfortable silence. Like it is so uncomfortable. I can't stand being in there. And it was funny because the second day, different location, similar numbers, and I walked in the room and everyone was chit-chatting. Mm-hmm. It was just like this energy. I had to ask people to get on the mic, excuse me, when you're trying to get people to shut up. Yeah. Almost like a classroom full of kids and the teacher walks in and that. Yeah.
In the exact same way, like you can define your work culture, your company culture, mm-hmm. on paper, have a team that respects it, etc. And you could have just one other person come in, and if this person doesn't respect that, it can actually change the dynamic in the culture quite quickly. So that's why. And then it goes back to what we were saying in pod 12, right, around making sure when you do hire people that they are a good fit for your company.
Exactly, and that's why it becomes part of the recruitment process. And here's one that we haven't spoken about. How about fun? Fun as a point of culture in your business. What if you could enjoy what you do? Mm-hmm. I spoke to someone this morning who said, he loves what he does. He absolutely loves what he does. He's never felt like it's work. And hopefully that's the case for you. I said to him, that's a rare existence. If you look at all the people on the planet, I don't know what the stats are, but it's a high percentage of people do not enjoy what they do. They live for their holidays, their 4 weeks holiday, they live for their weekends, and they just do what they do to make money, right? So if you can enjoy what you do, and then you can get your team to enjoy what they do, right? Horses for Courses employ people who are good at their specific role and they have fun doing it, then you can live an extraordinary life.
Okay, that's all we have time for. Tell us about your next event in Sydney.
Next event, can't wait. Friday the 18th of October. We've got lots of interest because it's all about time management. Everyone's busy. How you doing? I'm busy. How you been? How's your day been? Busy, I bet. So this event's all about the best time management hacks that I've come across over the last 20 years for builders, what you can do to free up more time and money in your business. So make sure you join us. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.